I have a confession to make. I'm an evil CHARA truther.
How could you? Chara's just a child. They died for their own family, the poor thing. You're the evil one for teaching them killing was okay. Chara's just giving you your just desserts at the end.
Well, riddle me this, Batman. Why is it that CHARA, on a second genocide route, will advise you to do a pacifist route knowing full well they're gonna do this? Why does CHARA have such a good grasp on consequences, control, curiosity, and morality if they're being influenced by the player killing a few monsters?
But honestly, nowadays, I'm less interested in debunking the Chara did nothing wrong argument, and more so interested in analyzing Chara's character as a whole.
And as a result, I've grown a greater appreciation for this character.
And after being absolutely moved by Deltarune chapters 3 and 4, and having held on to this theory since chapter 1, I am coming forward with a new theory of my own. Let's start off with the most basic and obvious evidence. What is the first thing that comes to mind when you think of the knight? Knives. Lots and lots and lots of knives.
While it did look like a bat at one time, the knight's weapon is almost always alluded to a knife.
Not even a sword, weirdly enough. And you know who else is synonymous with knives? Chara. But this theory would fall apart pretty quickly if it was just that. So, let's talk about this.
That scene looks eerily familiar, doesn't it?
Chara even deals 999 damage without player input. The same damage the knight deals in their respective boss fights. I mean, look at this! The knight's boss fight is essentially the Chara boss fight we never had, and that makes me a very happy boy. But hey, we could play ball with cosmetic similarities all day. I personally interpret the knight's antlers and bat as sort of a Goku Black situation where they took Death's antlers and bat from their memories of her. It's a theory for a whole other video.
So, how about character similarities?
Both Chara and the knight are also pretty manipulative, both directly and indirectly. With the knight's power influencing King, Queen, and Tenna to do their dirty work, the same way Chara indirectly influenced Azrael to adopt the kill or be killed mentality as Flowey. Not to mention, Chara directly manipulates the player a few times. Similarly to how the knight has such a chokehold on Chris, they have them literally implement it in the prophecy and effectively sabotaging it. And don't forget that both Chara and the knight have a habit of playing with their food. The sheer amount of similarities between Chara and the knight is so insane that even if Des does turn out to be the knight, it's still drawing similarities to Chara as Azrael's friend who was also kind of troubled, and who disappeared and gave everyone generational trauma, and was reincarnated into a blade-throwing destroyer of worlds.
But if all of these are just parallels, how do you explain this?
Chara's presence is everywhere throughout the first chapter, from the second voice, which is eerily similar to Chara's own, even with the emphasis on restricting choice, to the ending, which is a not at all subtle reference to the soulless pacifist ending in Undertale. And Mike Mantle over here confirms this isn't exactly unimportant. More on that later. You know, let's talk about the second voice anyway, because there seems to be two voices that transcend the Deltarune world. Because while Gaster was involved in summoning the soul and talking to Spamton, there was always a second voice that slam-dunked the soul into Chris and told Spamton the secrets about being a big shot. The second voice seems antithetical to Gaster, as indicated by the relationship with Spamton. Just like the knight, they act friendly and helpful towards Spamton only to betray him, while Gaster immediately drives Spamton insane upon communication. The second voice is also responsible for Chris' implementation of the prophecy because it was implied Chris was never supposed to be here, instead the vessel we make in the prologue of chapter 1. Considering the prophecy implies the first hero as only vaguely human. And you know, Chris is working with a knight, which obviously already derails the prophecy from here. All the second voice's sabotage is only in favor of the knight and bears heavy similarities to Chara, including their manipulative character traits. So we can only assume that they're all one and the same. Chara is the second voice and is the knight. That's really not complicated. Oh, and the Weird Route and the S-Rank minigames in Chapter 3 share the motif of becoming stronger, which isn't just a No Mercy Run thing, it's specifically a Chara thing. And speaking of the S-Rank minigames, let's turn our attention to a more tangible piece of evidence. The first minigame is a glaringly obvious passage of Undertale's genocide route. the blue fish being Undyne, the yellow lizards Alphys, and the golden trident wielders Asgore. And considering Ram said that this game inspired Tenno's boards, does that imply that Undertale's genocide route was the basis for Deltarune? Oh, and side tangent, Ram might come back in Chapter 6, but the only way to do that is to subscribe to my channel, which increases the likelihood of Ram coming back in Chapter 6 and helping fight the Knight, but make of that what you will. And the max level in the minigame, you know, the one inspired by Undertale's genocide route, is the same level you have when you encounter the Knight. Completing the pseudo Undertale No Mercy route brings forth the Knight. And you know who else the genocide route brings back? And while that kinda sounds like a reach, I do have some other evidence in pocket that I think you'll find very, very interesting. My theory is that the S-Rank minigames depict Chara's past, present, and future as the Roaring Knight. Kinda like a Tom Riddle and Lord Voldemort situation. The first game was their past in the genocide route, which shows them eradicating the enemy, becoming stronger, destroying the world, and moving on to the next, the Northern Light. The second game sees them using an Ice Mage, Carol, as their representative, a key to the shelter and preventing any buzzkill scientists from stopping them. And it just so happens that somewhere else, their other stooges, Chris and the Soul, are doing the same. The third game is their future, getting rid of Susie and Rousey, getting rid of Undyne and Des. All of this makes sense if the minigames have been the Knight's plans for past, present, and future. But what about the Mantle Keeper? Or Eram, or Mike, or whatever his name is? What's his role in the Knight's plan? We've been left with a massive clue. Mike Mantle's theme, Burning Eyes, refers to both their fire abilities and the Titan eyes that show up during their fights. But it also refers to Chris's own eyes flickering red at the same time. Now, you could be a boring person and read this off as a simple pun, but come on, let's not kid ourselves. There's clearly something going on between Chris and the Knight that runs deeper than just working together. The fact that Chris and the Knight get stronger at the same time, the way Chris parallels all the Knight's animations, the shared connections to hands, and now the burning eyes with Mike Mantle. Oh, and just a reminder, Mike Mantle possesses fire abilities, and you know what family is most associated with fire abilities? The Dreemurs. And Chris just happens to be one. My verdict? Eram is Chris, or at least represents Chris in the Knight's plans, and the Burn Despair leitmotif and the Titan Eyes solidify Chris's connections to the Knight. But still, if Mike Mantle is somehow involved in the Knight's plans, and they are Chris, what does that mean for Chris's future? Consider this. There is one crucial flaw in Chara's plans, the prophecy. Because the prophecy dictates that no matter what the Chara does, the Knight is always destined to lose. The Roaring is destined to be stopped by the heroes, and the Angels' Heaven will ultimately be banished. But what if they had a workaround, implemented literally in the prophecy? If we've assumed the Knight is Chara because of our S-Rank minigame thesis, then let's go back to that one scene of Chris brandishing their knife and their eyes glowing red. And this is clearly an indication of Chara's presence. And that means one thing. The Knight's trump card has been staring us right in the face this whole time. My theory is that Mike Mantle is meant to represent the Knight possessing Chris and re-emerging as the Angel of Death after successfully circumventing the prophecy. Now I know what you're thinking, but no, that can't be. It clearly has to be the player or Noelle. I mean, look at all this evidence pointing to them being the Angel, and you'd be right. But who says the Angel can't be multiple candidates? After all, the Angel was 3 candidates in Undertale, Frisk, Chara, and Asriel, as all of them saw the surface, returned, and emptied the underground. And Chara is our current Angel of Death, and directly in cahoots with Chris as the Roaring Knight, who just so happens to look like the Angel too. I mean, look at their body shape. But what about Chris? Well, I've already discussed Mike Mantle as evidence, but how about a different kind of evidence? Like, let's turn back to Undertale's Angel, Chara, and Asriel, and see how it parallels the relationship between Chris and Noelle. You know, one of them is a demon-themed human who had a reputation of spooking the angel-themed monster, who just so happens to have a sick dad. And the angel-themed monster is already an angel candidate. I just think Chris, being the final boss of Deltarune, would be so insanely perfect. I mean, can you imagine the emotional stakes, the subversion expectations, the great character development it would do for Susie, Chris, and the player? And remember what Jevil said?
Unfortunately, you kids cannot have such a pleasant dream. From now, a nightmare will awaken your hearts in the shadow of the night's hand.
A nightmare in the shadow of the night's hand. Interesting, isn't it? I went into this theory thinking it would be some silly Chapter 1 era hype moments in Aura, but now that I'm thinking about it, CHARA has to be involved somehow. It's not a perfect theory, and it's probably not likely to happen, but I still believe there's a lot of thematic merit. You see, a lot of Deltarune's themes revolve around no one being disposable. Susie makes sure Rouse never thinks that lowly of himself, or that Tenna never gets thrown away. To her, no one is disposable, but that is not the case for CHARA. CHARA constantly treats their lives as disposable. Their family, the race that took them in, an entire village of humans, or even their own life can all be sacrificed in the pursuit of power. And this is even indicated in how they treat Asgore's illness. Now, I don't necessarily think that they were laughing out of some sick sadism, but the fact that they laugh it off, which usually means discarding something that's unimportant, like a joke, it's kind of indicative of their personality and how they treat lives as something that's inherently sacrificial. Wow, CHARA is getting so many antitheses, you'd think that they're Sonic the Hedgehog. But anyway, Susie is the perfect antithesis for CHARA if they are the Knight. Treating lives as actually having value, going through any lengths to make sure that no one is disposable. In contrast, the Roaring Knight, CHARA, was more than willing to put their loved ones at the expense of their own murderous interests. I don't think CHARA necessarily started out as evil, but they were immature and clearly mentally unwell, and when given the chance to kill, they took it, seeing life as having no more value other than a means to an end. And in that immaturity comes their extremely face value idea of friendship, which is also a theme in Deltarune. Throughout CHARA's story, they seem to have an extremely shallow interpretation of friendship, viewing them as only good companions to help serve their agenda and watch the world burn. And I imagine that's how they, as the Knight, view Chris as well, a superficial friend figure who's only meant to serve their agenda, perfectly putting them at odds with Susie again. Because Susie is Chris's true best friend, because of how much they care for each other, how much they trust each other, how much they value each other as people, and how much they're willing to do for one another.
And perhaps this is why they look so much like Des as the Roaring Knight, because they believe they can replace Des as a much better friend. Copies are monochrome after all. A lot of this fits weirdly perfectly, and I know you're thinking Toby would never make the main villain of Deltarune someone from an entirely different game, but it wouldn't be too far off now, would it? I mean, Toby has always implemented Undertale's fan service in Deltarune. Revisiting genocide bosses and absolute goat Gerson Boom, a wonderful fluffy boy who has to be saved taking center stage, Undertale's biggest mystery running the show. And you know what else is Undertale fan service? More of CHARA. And honestly, I can go on and on. Gaster's main priority being banishing the Angels' heaven since the very creation of Undertale, the evidence of CHARA's presence in Chapter 1 when they've claimed to move on to the next world. I do wonder what that next world is. Or the parallels to Azrael argued in favor of Death Knight can also be argued in favor of CHARA Knight as an alternate Angel of Death. I doubt this theory will come true, but if it does, it would be really freaking cool. And I remember the days of early Chapter 3 and 4 theorizing, where it wasn't just Des who was the Knight. There were 3 specific candidates, the big 3, Des, Papyrus, and CHARA. CHARA deserves to be part of that big 3 again, at least with the evidence that I have presented. Toodle pip, fellas. If you made it to the end of the video, congratulations, you're a certified cool dude. I really appreciate that you managed to watch this video all the way through, listening to this poor little goat on the internet ramble about this nigh impossible whack Chapter 1 era theory. I'm not CHARA, I'm the Knight. I just thought it was cool, and I hope you do too. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, or think my arguments have some merit in some way, or you just liked listening to it while you, probably make another theory. This is my first time trying my hand at something like this, and as you can tell by the big scary watermark at the left-hand corner of the screen, I'm something of a brokey animator, so I'd like to apologize for all the audio quality inconsistencies or animation errors, but I hope you can forgive that as long as you were rightfully entertained. 2026 is right around the corner, and with Deltarune Chapter 5 fast approaching, so excited, honestly. I thought there would never be a more perfect time to publish this video. So yeah, that's that. I hope you guys liked the video. As always, leave a like and subscribe, and please be civil in the comment section. I know this theory is whack and might cause some discourse, but as always, I'll see y'all on the other side of 2026.